tonight, President Obama does it again.
The terrorists do not speak for over 1 billion Muslims. They no more represent Islam than any madman who kills innocents in the name of God represents Christianity or Judaism.
Now even his friends in the lamestream media, they're turning on him.
It seems to be more of a dog and pony show.
They're trying to be so politically correct.
Plus,
I do hear him criticize America much more often than other American presidents.
Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani says he does not think Obama loves America. And Senator Ted Cruz takes a shot at the commander-in-chief.
What undermines the global effort is for the President of the United States to be an apologist for radical Islamic terrorists.
The great one, Mark Levin, is here. He responds. And it's the story no one is talking about, an al-Qaeda operative on trial in New York City. Kimberly Guilfoyle is here tonight to break it down. Hannity starts right here, right now. And welcome to Hannity. Now, yesterday, President Obama, once again, he went to great lengths to distance Muslims from radical Islamists who are committing heinous acts of violence in the name of their religion.
The terrorists do not speak for over 1 billion Muslims who reject their hateful ideology. They no more represent Islam than any madman who kills innocents in the name of God represents Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism or Hinduism. No religion is responsible for terrorism.
Really? Now, the president defends the Islamic faith at all costs, and he has no problem routinely insulting Jews or being against Bibi Netanyahu or attacking Christians. Now, remember when he called a terrorist attack at that kosher deli in Paris a random act of violence?
It is entirely legitimate for the American people to be deeply concerned when you've got a bunch of violent, vicious zealots who behead people or randomly shoot a bunch of folks in a deli in Paris.
Now, of course, who could forget just 2 weeks ago the president threw Christianity under the bus. Remember this? At the National Prayer Breakfast in D.C.? This is what he said.
Remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. Slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ.
Did he ever say terrible deeds in the name of Allah or Muhammad? And no problem saying terrible deeds in the name of Christ. Pretty unbelievable. And earlier today, the White House wrapped up its 3-day conference on, quote, countering violent extremism, where you couldn't mention Islamic terrorism, and things were getting so bad, even liberals at NBC, they couldn't defend the president.
You don't see the word Islam or Islamic or radical Islam anywhere in the fact sheet. They use extremists. They're very careful not to associate it with one religion. It comes across as if they're trying to be so politically correct that they're losing focus on what the problem is.
ISIS is spreading like a virus, and months of U.S.-led airstrikes don't seem to be containing it. ISIS is moving into all the cracks in the Middle East, the unresolved conflicts in Iraq, Libya, the Sinai, Syria, and Gaza. This is not a problem that can be droned away.
Here he has the summit, no heads of government coming. The participation has not been at a particularly high level. There hasn't been a whole lot of support from either Europe or the Middle East at a very high level for what the president is setting out here. It seems to be more of a dog and pony show.
Now, meanwhile, as the summit comes to an end, there are reports out of Iraq that ISIS is making money through harvesting of organs of their victims and could be intricately involved in human trafficking. In other words, selling women for money and even young children into slavery. Standing by at the White House with much more is Ed Henry. Ed, you know, he had no problem talking about terrible deeds done in the name of Jesus, denied that, you know, claimed that what happened in Paris and the kosher supermarket was random. Joe Biden even went as far today as talking about right-wing extremists who commit acts of terrorism in the name of the Bible, but they didn't talk about Islamic terrorism in 3 days?
Sean, what's interesting is that the president's gotten some bipartisan criticism. You mentioned some of the media criticism, but Democrat Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii, who is a member of the House Armed Services Committee, she came out and told Fox that she thinks the focus of this summit was off, that it should have been on Islamic extremism. You had the Republican chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, Michael McCaul, saying today he thinks this was a summit without substance because the president did not call out radical Islam and is not going to be able potential to go after the fanatics if he doesn't call it what it is. Interesting, because I had an exchange with Josh Earnest about the statement that he put out over the weekend about this awful beheading of 21 people. He called them citizens this weekend and did not mention their faith. Listen. I'm curious, why didn't you mention it was 21 Christians killed by Muslims? Is that relevant?
It sure is, because the ISIL extremists who carried out this attack indicated that the reason that they were killing them wasn't just because they were Egyptian, but also because they were Christian.
It went out under your name. Why didn't you say 21 Christians were killed?
Yeah. Well, Ed, I've tried to be clear here. I can't account for that specific line in the statement, but we've been clear there that we condemn this murder.
Interesting, because 2 days earlier last week, the White House put out a statement under the president's name about the tragedy of 3 Muslim students being killed at the University of North Carolina. And in that statement, they invoked their faith, talked about them being Muslim American students. And also the president in that statement, a written statement, said that no one in America should be targeted, he said, because of what they look like, who they are, or how they worship. And so specifically, their Muslim faith was invoked in that case, but strange that the Christian faith was not mentioned in the 21 beheadings. That's what I was pressing Josh Earnest about, Sean.
Oh, I think that was a good point, but if you really go through it step by step here, he mentioned terrible deeds done in the name of Christ. I've never heard him say that about Muhammad or Allah or Islam, and it even goes out of his way to suggest that it's not tied to the religion in terms of Islam. And then what Paris, the president, said was random at the kosher supermarket. We had another spokesperson claim that no Jewish people were killed, when in fact that was not true. He's at a political war with Bibi Netanyahu that is now well known throughout political circles. And you're right, he mentioned South Carolina in that particular case almost immediately. I mean,
yeah, North Carolina.
Yeah, North Carolina, rather. Sorry. And what is the reaction of the White House to the comments, I'll get to them in a minute, of Rudy Giuliani?
Well, it's interesting. White House spokesman Eric Schultz today said that he thinks Rudy Giuliani test drove that message, he said, back in his quote-unquote fleeting 2008 campaign. So it was sort of a political pushback there, teasing, jabbing at Rudy Giuliani for having such a short-lived presidential campaign. Doesn't really answer the substance of it, but I can tell you the chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, was much tougher in saying, look, she said she opposed many of the policies of Republican President George W. Bush, but never questioned his patriotism. So I can tell you, people here at the White House, the Democratic National Committee, were not pleased with those comments, as you can imagine.
Okay. Thank you, Ed Henry, tonight at the White House. Joining me now with Reaction, he's a nationally syndicated radio talk show host. I call him the great one. Mark Levin is back with us. Mark, good to see you, sir. I want to put up on the screen, Mark, the comments made by Rudy Giuliani. I just outlined the differences. He said, I do not believe, and I know this is a horrible thing to have to say, but I do not believe this president loves America. Then he went on to explain what he meant about the apology tour, not believing in American exceptionalism and talking about it the way, say, Ronald Reagan or even Bill Clinton used to, talking about his background with Frank Marshall Davis and Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dorn and Reverend Wright, etc., denying American exceptionalism. What is your reaction to that?
Well, Rudy's exactly right. And I would add, and I've said this many years on my radio program, when somebody says they want to fundamentally transform America, well, then you must not love America. It's like saying I'm going to fundamentally transform my wife or my girlfriend. That means you must not love your wife or your girlfriend. And Obama has shown no indication that he loves the Constitution. He never talks about capitalism. He's always bringing up the past. He's always picking at scabs. Even now, he's a patsy for Islamic terrorism. Half of his speeches are about how terrible America is, and America shouldn't react in a negative way. I want to remind this president, he likes to bring up Jesus in a certain context, and I say this as a Jew. You know, there's an awful lot of Christians in America and in Europe who have died, who have been maimed, who have been harmed, trying to defend innocent, peace-loving Muslims in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, and so forth. And it would be nice every now and then if he would acknowledge that. And I would also say this man is the most preposterous and absurd president, maybe modern American history, maybe any time in American history. And here's the sad fact. The sad fact is, because of what he's doing or not doing, it's going to be left to the next president to deal with this, and it's going to be much worse. The genocide, much more widespread. They're going to have much more geography, much more resources, because this guy's not going to do it for whatever reason. He is not up to the task. Sean, I want to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
He is no yeah.
All right. Well,
I was going to say,
ahead.
he's no defender of Muslims. And Muslims are being slaughtered all over the Middle East. They're being slaughtered in Africa, along with Christians, along with non-believers in a certain sect of Islam. This man is not defending them. It's those of us who speak out and who are insisting that we take effective military steps to put an end to this. We're the ones speaking out for Muslims and so forth.
Well, so, and for women's rights, you know, people go after conservatives. They don't support gay marriage, but they're standing up against the killing of gays and lesbians. They're standing up for women's rights who can't drive, leave their home without a relative that's male, or the horrible treatment of women under Sharia. You know, but I want to, it's almost pathological at this point. There's a cognitive dissonance that we're discussing here, because the president steadfastly refuses to say radical Islam, acknowledge the enemy, radical Islamists, but he has no problem talking about terrible deeds in the name of Jesus. Joe Biden went out there today talking about terrorism in the name of the Bible. They invited a radical to this summit, a guy that suggested that maybe we should look at Israel as a possible co-conspirator, what happened on 9/11. There's something deeper here.
It's because
I can't quite put my finger on it. What do you think it is?
Well, I think Obama is a religious and historical illiterate. I think he really does have contempt for this country. He has contempt for our military. He's demonstrated that, and Rudy's exactly right, and you had mentioned this early on. Who did he hang out with? He hung out with this guy Khalidi, who was a mouthpiece for Arafat. He hung out with Dorn and Ayers. Who are they? Domestic terrorists. I can go down the list. He's exactly right, Rudy. His great mentor was a well-known Soviet communist sympathizer in Hawaii. His father, the same thing. And so this is who indoctrinated Obama. He doesn't think like us. He doesn't react the way we do. But I do want to do one thing to remind people what we're really talking about here. Obama, as I said, is a patsy for Islamic terrorism, the way Chamberlain was a patsy for the Third Reich. And this won't take long. I want to just a couple of sentences from Anne Frank's diary. Because, you know, Sean, this is a war really on little girls and women. That's what's taking place, the brutalization in front of our faces. Anne Frank said in 1944 in her diary, "I've reached the point where I can hardly care whether I live or die. The world will keep on turning without me, and I can't do anything to change events anyway. I'll just let matters take their course and concentrate on studying and hope that everything will be all right in the end." And then shortly later she wrote, "But the minute I was alone, I knew I was going to cry my eyes out. I slid to the floor in my nightgown and began by saying my prayers very fervently. Then I drew my knees to my chest, lay my head on my arms, and cried, all huddled up on the bare floor. And then a loud sob brought me back to earth." Mr. President, there are tens of thousands of Anne Franks right now being brutalized. Why don't you do something about it? Why don't you demonstrate that you're a leader, you're the commander-in-chief, and let's take care of business?
I don't think it's going to happen under this man. Mark Levin, thank you for being with us. Coming up, we'll have more on Rudy Giuliani's comments. Also, Ted Cruz speaks out. Of course, Rudy's saying that he doesn't believe the president loves this country. Plus, a possible hate crime in Michigan. Is radical Islam, is it spreading right here on American soil? We'll tell you about this case. And later, Ainsley Earhardt reports on new ethical questions surrounding Hillary Clinton. And our own Kimberly Guilfoyle is here tonight with her legal analysis about the trial of an accused al-Qaeda terrorist that wanted to bomb New York City's subway system. Coming up straight ahead.